So my name is Jane Perez. You can call me Gay. Currently, I serve as the Deputy Director General at the Philippine Space Agency. At the same time, I am a faculty at UP Diliman. I'm an associate professor at the Institute of Environmental Science and Meteorology. I did not imagine being a scientist, but things become more directed. I had my experience at NASA looking through the telescope and I saw Jupiter and I couldn't believe ang Filipino scientists working on space science and astronomy. So I studied in an all-girls school from kinder up to grade 10. It's called Universidad de Santa Isabel now. Formerly, it's Colegio de Santa Isabel. It's in Naga City. Then I went to UP at the National Institute of Physics. I took a Bachelor of Science in Applied Physics. At the same institute, got my master's and also my PhD in physics. I have never left UP since I started college in UP. I was employed as an instructor at the National Institute of Physics. So that's how I started my career as a faculty member of the university. And then I took a short break when I did my postdoc. And when I went back, I joined a new institute, but still as a faculty. I've been teaching for several years already since I graduated from bachelor's. And then right now I'm on secondment at the Philippine Space Agency. So again, I'm like on leave from the university so I can fulfill my role at the Philippine Space Agency. But after this, I'll go back to the university. My interest in science, I think it has always been there. As a kid, I enjoy science subjects. I enjoy math among all of the subjects. I like numbers. So it has always been there, but it doesn't mean that I always wanted to be a scientist. So back then, it's really hard to imagine being a scientist. I guess the only figure in our mind, well, at least in my case back then, is like Einstein. Right? If you think of a scientist, then you think of Einstein. And then maybe you tell yourself, oh, it's impossible to be like Einstein. And I think it's because of not having a role model to look up to when I was young. I don't know what a scientist in the Philippines would look like. I don't know anyone in person. I must have read some in magazines, but far-fetched. On the other hand, you see a lot of other professionals around you. So in my case, I see doctors, I see accountants, teachers. So growing up, it's like, okay, I want to be a doctor or I want to be an accountant. I did not imagine being a scientist, but things become more directed to being a scientist when I went to college. I was a DOST SEI scholar. The scholarship requirements, you need to pursue science or engineering course, right? So I took physics. It's also the program that I passed in UP Diliman. So I got in physics, and then that's where I started to see, like in the flesh, scientists who are not like Einstein, who are more of a regular people that you can interact with. And that's only really when I started to seriously think that, okay, maybe I can be a scientist because this profession actually exists. I guess in my experience, it's not easy to dream of becoming somebody if you cannot relate to what this someone or somebody is doing. So I think that's important for kids to get exposed to this environment where they'll see scientists in the flesh, speaking normally, talking to them in a very casual conversation. Maybe they can tell themselves, oh, okay, I can be a scientist. So maybe this will go back as far as 2010 when my interest in space started. So that's actually when I went to NASA for my postdoctoral research. When I was there, I was so impressed with what they have. Of course, it's NASA, right? It was actually my first time to see a planet in a telescope, through a telescope at NASA. So prior to that, well, I've peeked through a telescope, but it's not impressive, either it's blurred or it's hazy or something, or mali yung tinututukan and you really don't know what you're looking at. So but I had my experience at NASA looking through the telescope when I saw Jupiter, and I couldn't believe what I saw. Totoo pala yung Jupiter na, joke lang. Anyway, pero parang it's just amazing to see that. I've met astronauts, I've met the engineers who work on the space shuttle mission. I've met Nobel Prize winner working at NASA. So it's amazing. But you know what came to my mind is really how I wish we have something like this in the Philippines. You know, the experience there is something really, it's so good that you just don't want to keep it to yourself. And maybe say it's cliche or something, but that's really how I felt. This is so amazing. I just couldn't keep it. I just couldn't be here and just benefit from it myself. It's so good that I hope I could share it in the Philippines. And although, of course, back then, I never imagined that the Philippines will have its own Philippine Space Agency. Like, who would have thought, right? But that's how I felt. Like, we need to have our own NASA. We need to have something like this in the Philippines. And of course, how would that happen if I will not be able to share what I experienced at NASA? I believe in our talents, in the Filipino talent. And we may not be as advanced as the US or other countries in terms of, I guess, science and tech, but there are plenty of opportunities for us. And that's also one of my motivation of coming back here. The problems that we are solving is in the country. And there's no way I'll be able to solve those problems if I'm in the US. I mean, actually, that's how I really felt, because when I was there, I was processing satellite data, but I'm looking at the Philippines. That's my study area. I want to verify that what I'm seeing is indeed a forest and not something else. But how would I know? I'm in the US. So I feel a disconnect studying the Philippines while I'm in the US. So I really feel that I need to be back here. I need to apply what I learned in my experience at NASA to solve our own problems. We have a lot of problems here. We have a lot of science to do in the country, and also to share the experience that I had. And when I mentioned earlier about building a culture at PhilSA, which is sort of like my mission for joining PhilSA, that's part of it, trying to, share what I saw at NASA, and then maybe get a little of that as we build PhilSA, translate some of that at PhilSA. So we're still working on it, of course, since the agency is just starting or just building up. Actually, we are very few. Filipino scientists are very few. Compared to other professions in the country. So it kind of feels special to be a Filipino scientist or to be a scientist. When we go out of our country, whenever we attend conferences, we present our work, we feel a sense of pride every time we do that, because we know that there are really few of us who chose this career. There's some sense, both pride and humility, actually. It's maybe sense of honor. Okay, you feel proud representing your country, and at the same time, you feel humbled being given that opportunity. So it's a good feeling to be a Filipino scientist. There is always this desire, how we wish we are more. Sana mas madami kami. Okay? Sana mas maraming scientists. So there's always this longing in the community. Since I started by saying na sobrang konti yung Filipino scientists, so mas lalong konti pa ang Filipino scientists working on space science and astronomy. So kasi it's a very specialized field. Pero yun nga, I want to extend it not just on astronomy, but expand it to space science in general. But even with that, it's also really konti lang yung mga Filipino scientists in this field. There is the desire for us to grow more, for us to encourage the young generation to pursue this field. Okay, so you too can become scientists in space science or astronomy. Una, I will expand again, not just astronomy, but let's include space science, space technology, applications, and now I will mention other fields like space law, space communication, space economics. Okay, so why am I mentioning all these different fields related to space sector? The reason I'm mentioning that is to encourage you by letting you know that the space sector is vast. And first, it's not just astronomy, okay? It's not just studying planets, stars, moon. So there's plenty of opportunity for careers in this field. You can take any engineering course, any science course, actually you can take economics, you can take law, you can take communication. You can be wherever you are now, and you can end up in space. So don't ever think that space, science or astronomy are just for geeks or for Einstein-like scientists. There are opportunities for almost every discipline to contribute in the space sector.